Hi, my name is Max Flower. I'm here with Jeff Pulver at the Israel conference. He's going to tell us about the 140 conferences that he is the founder of. Jeff?
So the 140 conferences started out back in 2009 almost as a reaction to Ashton Kutcher having a race to 1 million followers with CNN, and I wanted to call bullshit on it, frankly, because I've been on Twitter since early 2007. I'm an investor in Twitter, and I thought it was like almost a disgrace that the world was just focusing on how many followers somebody had and not any substance. So back then I decided to do a conference that focused on Twitter as a platform and its effects on celebrity and the media and advertising and politics. And it turned out that the idea of the conference was a great one, but what we were focusing on was not broad enough. And over the past 4 years, this conference has evolved into a platform for people ultimately to discover meaning in life. And the conference, I spent the past year curating the conference taking place in New York next month. Actually, it's June now, June 19th and 20th at 92nd Street Y. And it's going to be a fabulous experience. 2 days of people from all over the world. They speak in 10-minute segments. They tell their stories in 10 minutes. And they share something meaningful about them. And I have Deepak Chopra coming with his family, having a conversation. They may talk for 20 minutes, but it's a panel. But the individual talks are 10 minutes. And I have people who have experienced this reawakening of humanity, a reawakening of spirituality, not a religious one. But you see, we're in a world today that has 7 billion people. And we have an opportunity for hundreds of millions, if not billions of people to connect. And there's a reawakening at a level which we've never had before, and a connectedness which is now only happening because of this. And there's a revolution that's taking place, which is I call about connected me's. Because it's no longer about we the people, it's about me the people, and how individual voices are affecting change in big ways. For example, in 2010, there was this earthquake that took place in Haiti. And 3 days after the earthquake happened, my friend Ann Curry from NBC News, she was on the ground. And she became aware of a situation that Doctors Without Borders had cargo planes filled with medical supplies and doctors trying to land on the runway. But the trouble was that the U.S. Air Force just took control of the runway and would not let any planes land. So I happen to be a ham radio operator. Usually in times of crisis, I'm on my ham radio and trying to do stuff. On that particular day, at that particular moment, I was in New York in my kitchen on my laptop. And I saw Ann Curry tweet, say, at U.S. Air Force, please let Doctors Without Borders land their plane. And on Twitter, when someone says something, it's called retweeting. You just repeat what she says. And I did that. To my utter amazement, a minute later, I get a message at U.S. Air Force, at Jeff Pulver, we're on it. I'm saying, okay. There's a major crisis going on in Haiti. Somebody claiming to be from the U.S. Air Force is talking to me. And I'm like, what's going on with this? Then an hour later, I get a tweet saying, at U.S. Air Force, at Jeff Pulver, the plane has landed. So I wrote, thank you. And then I realized I got a message 2 days later on Twitter, at U.S. Air Force is following you, which is kind of spooky. So I go to the site, and they followed 27 people. I understood the White House. I understood Southern Command. I understand U.S. Army. But Jeff Pulver, I was number 27. So I send them a direct message, and I say, where are you? The Pentagon. It's like, I have not yet asked for an airlift, but I'm pretty confident that if I asked for help, I would get it. But what was amazing was that connectedness of being on the same frequency as what was happening. A week later, a friend of mine who's involved in a startup in Israel, there were 270 people from IDF on the ground in Haiti. And my friend's commander was in Tel Aviv, and they were running a live mashup between Google Maps and Twitter to figure out the origins of tweets. 10 days after the earthquake, a journalist tweeted that he heard screams out of an area that was a bodega. And this is 10 days later. And so my friend was sent on a search and rescue mission with his team based on one tweet. And sure enough, don't you know, my friend got there and he heard screaming, and the guy was basically saying, leave me alone, leave me alone. It turned out that there was a food section and an alcohol section in this bodega. For 10 days, this guy was trapped in the alcohol section. And he was a little toasted. And my friend shot video, which he showed me, and they saved his life based on a tweet. Now, I used to work in the World Trade Center. My life was saved because in 1996, I was fired from my day job, because I had the kind of job which would more or less would make sure I was there on 9/11. The company I worked for lost 700 people. I worked for Cantor Fitzgerald Securities. And I could tell you that on 9/11, in New York City, there was the fire department, the police department, the civil workers, the FBI, so many agencies, all with radios, nobody talking to each other. Because back then we had different channels. It took 5 years post 9/11 to homogenize the communications for emergencies. So despite all best efforts, no one could talk. The Dalai Lama, shortly after the Haiti crisis, goes on Twitter and he talks about his outlook for humanity in the 21st century. And he said never in his entire life has he felt more positive than he did at that moment. Why? Because the outpouring of love that he saw happen in Haiti. And I'll argue that what happened so despite best efforts of 9/11, no one could talk. The amazing thing about what happened in Haiti is for the first time, humanity was on the same frequency. And we're all connected. And that's sort of that level of connectedness where it's individual voices connecting and affecting positive change. That's what the 140 conferences are really about. We're really about connecting and sharing and engaging in meaningful ways. And I believe there is a revolution going on right now, which history will write about. At the same type of stuff you'd read about capitalism and Marxism, fascism and communism. This is an ism. It's really big, but it's not a Twitterism. It's not a Facebookism. Sorry, Mark. But it's really it's an internetism. It's the unintended consequences of 40 plus years of the internet bringing together people and providing a voice that can now be heard and amplified. It's a phenomenal moment in time.
Well, I like what you're saying, but what do you think will be the consequences of? Will that lift up people as a society, or bring people down, or will we stay about the same?
It's already lifting people up. It is changing the worlds we live because, as Thomas Friedman suggested, that the world was flat. The world is flat, and we're now seeing that distance doesn't really matter, and people who never before had any voice and were invisible are now being seen for the very first time. There are positive consequences of this to deal with the impact of this, but I believe it's a net good, not a net bad. And I believe that the world's becoming a better place because of this.
Wow. I think you're absolutely right. You take the printing, the Gutenberg printing press and how that changed humanity. You're a brilliant man and a great leader. Jeff, thanks for bringing people together and doing what you're doing, and I know you'll keep innovating.
Thank you.
So keep up the great work. I appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of luck.
I must say, though, the 140 conferences, there's one thing we always do. We hug.
I love it. I love it. There should be more hugs in the world.
Absolutely.
Jeff, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
That'd be great.
Thank you.